everybody. This is Board Game Chats. I'm Myron.
And I'm Chris.
Hello, Myron.
What's up, Chris? How's it going, man?
Oh, it's going really good here, actually. Just getting over a bit of a cold, as you know. So we're doing this a little later than normal. I've had laryngitis for 3 weeks, which my wife, Sherry, would probably say has been a nice break. But, I'm feeling much better and I'm raring to go. But I know you have some exciting news. You have a new addition to the family that I haven't met yet.
Yeah, we got a new cat, Isolt. She is like royalty. She's amazing. She sits on her throne. We have a little perch for her up by a window. It's amazing. It's awesome. She arrived just at the right time.
She looks adorable. She looks like she's really settled in already.
Yeah. Anna's really good with people. She's good with small talk with people and pets too, I guess. So yeah,
she's small talking with the small animal.
Yeah,
that's good.
Very, very tiny voice.
Very tiny voice. That's good. I can't wait to see how her and Apollo, my dog, get together, work out their differences and get together.
It'll be fun.
So today we have a very interesting topic and guest that's come on, of an experienced content creator, I think is probably what we would call him. His name is Jason Perez, and rather than I explaining what he does, why don't we get him on and get him to tell us. Hi, Jason.
Yo, my people.
Hey, what's up, Justin?
This is Jason from the Shelf Stories YouTube channel and also the One Stop Co-op Shop YouTube channel. So I have two YouTube channels that I participate in. Awesome. My Happy Fun Times videos where I do solo and cooperative game playthroughs and reviews. That's on the One Stop Co-op Shop. That's my Good Times. So you might know me from there. But you also might know me from my editorial channel, Shelf Stories, where I go kind of above the table and talk about just special topics and human topics and all that kind of thing. For myself, I am a psychotherapist. I do individual therapy, marriage therapy through a private practice here in Hartford, Connecticut, here in the good old US of A. And I do not believe in cats. That is not a thing.
My mom doesn't either.
Not only do I not own a cat, I don't even believe in them. I don't like whatever you said about them. They are just no. I'm good. I'm good. You said the cat was the queen. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure. As soon as you step out of line, she's gonna have you running away and going to fill that bowl again. No, I'm good. I'm the king of my house.
That's awesome. So, why don't you tell us about the YouTube channels, how long you've been doing it, and what you do on the two different channels?
Absolutely. So I started off with a podcast called Every Night is Game Night. Started off as Table for One. This is in 2016. I called into a friend of mine. He was doing a solo games podcast, so alone. And he's like, hey, did anybody want to join me? I'm like, okay, I know about solo games. I love solo games. That's kind of how I got a big part of how I got into gaming was it's been really tough finding people who like my taste and who have my availability. I moved from New York to Connecticut. I didn't know anybody in Connecticut. So any game that played solo, like a Pandemic or, like a cooperative game that plays solo, that was my jam. So I hopped on a solo gaming podcast and we talked about it and then we just stuck. And eventually I took it over. His name is Anthony. He's still a dear friend from Board Gamers Anonymous. So he has his own main show. I took over the side show. And so I did 190 episodes of that. And it was really, really cool. I needed it.
Nice.
I needed it it was a weekly, and it was my stability. There were a lot of change. And as I was moving to Connecticut and, getting to know people and getting to know the groups and everything. And nobody plays the games that I like up here. It is so irritating. Everyone plays heavy Euros. No, thank you.
Interesting.
I go and it's just cubes as far as the eye can see. And oh my God. And here, we have a space for you. What are you doing for the next 4.5 hours?
Dying.
So I mean, it's been tough to find, people who like my taste in games. Like I don't want to like crap on anybody's taste. Like you have fun, what you do. Just like just want to like do your thing. So I stay with the solo side for a while. Eventually, you figure it out and you do it. And I kind of reached a point with the podcast where I was like, okay, I've said everything I want to say. And I started doing, I guess, like cultural conversations, political conversations, like human stuff on the show. And I'm like, okay, I can do more with this. So I shut the podcast down, just thought about it a little bit. And then like George Floyd happened. This was in June of 2020. So I shut the podcast down and like, I don't know, like right when lockdown began. And in early 2020. And I'm like, I got to just rethink this. And then George Floyd happened. And everything happened, in board gaming, right? I don't know if y'all remember, like every creator, every publisher had to do like a statement, right? Okay, who has a statement? Who doesn't have a statement? Da, 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 da. And the Dice Tower had, they're asking Tom Askel to do a statement, and he put out a statement. It didn't go so well. I don't know if you remember any of that, but I don't want to litigate all that. But I was on the Dice Tower. My podcast was on a Dice Tower, so I had a relationship with Tom. So I called him up. I'm like, this is what happened. Like, what's going on? And I'm like, okay, before, as opposed to kind of like telling him, let me show him. So I made my own video. My very first video was Black Lives Matter. Just kind of like, what this means, why it matters. And I posted it in the Facebook group. I got a whole lot of likes. I got a whole lot of unlikes. I don't know if Facebook doesn't do that, but like, or like little sad faces because like, why are you talking about this? But like, it's the moment. So I think I hit a note, and I'm like, wow, this video thing is cool. So that became Shelf Stories. Shelf Stories was my channel to kind of like explore topics like that, the intersection of the human and the game. Like you said before we started the show, like it's about life, right? It's about the gamers, and so like that's what Shelf Stories became. But I like playing games, so I put my gaming stuff on the Dice Tower initially, but then I moved over full time to the One Stop Co-op Shop. So that's kind of my brain. Like, I mean, every once in a while, like I have a game laid out right here. I'm going to refilm all the Tiny Epic games right now because I want to.
Right.
I love the Tiny Epic games. It's like there's 11 of them. So it's like I'm just going to film. I'm going to no politics, no nothing. Just want to have fun. So that I put that on the One Stop Co-op Shop. And then by the time I'm done, I'm like, all right, I'm ready to get back to other things. So it's nice to be able to kind of bounce back and forth and indulge different passions.
Yeah. Now, like I love the aspect of what you do, but the way that you frame it as human things. Now, I like maybe like a year or two ago, around the time that Andrew Yang started saying humanity first. You know what I'm saying? I was like, humanity, that's actually pretty cool. And well, if you think about it from the perspective, well, I'll go into my mind and how I got to humanity, and then I'd like to ask you, like, how did you get from Black Lives Matter, this group, that group, blah blah blah, and then to humanity? And so I thought, all right, well, humanity is like everyone else aside from like the people who want to be like rulers. And so maybe those people are like the inhuman people. And if we consider it that way, like we super have like the numbers to like win if we all just gained up and we're like, yeah, we're all humans. Like, so that's how did you get there?
Yeah, I mean, you're speaking the Occupy language, you're the 1% versus 99%, right? And that I was I've always been like, I'm a social worker. Like that's my main degree. Like, I did my degree at the same exact, and I did it at Hunter College in New York City, and I did it at the same exact time as Occupy. So like it was in the air, and this is what I kind of soaked in. So it's like, let's all get together. And if you went, and I went down there, went down to Zuccotti Park and, talking to people. It's like, it was multicultural. It was all sorts of different people. It was people from the middle of the country that you would never know. It was white, it was black, it was music, it was festive. It was like, it was like a political Mardi Gras. Almost like as like people like talk about it as this like angry thing or a bunch of like spoiled brats that were just like sitting there with nothing. Like there was plenty of like beautiful like getting together stuff to do, and eventually like the movement fizzled out for various reasons. But the ethos of it is exactly what you're talking about, like the 99%. And so like and also I'm a psychotherapist, so like I went the individual route, but like I'll talk to anybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care what your politics are. It's like you're a human being, and as long as you're not a complete jerk, which there are complete jerks out there, I got nothing for you. But I mean, if you mean well, I mean, I'll give you the time of day, and etc. So like when it comes to gaming, I don't know. Like I was actually talking about this on our Discord the other day, and he was saying I don't want politics in our games, and I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying about like I don't want to talk about Trump versus whoever. I don't want to talk about that.
Right.
Like I don't want to talk about electoral politics. I don't want to talk about like the Flint, Michigan pipe crisis when I'm putting cubes down and rolling my dice. Like that, there's a time and place for everything. But like if a game looks a certain way, or if I'm sitting in front of my game shelf, and if the faces on those games look a certain way, and the names in the games look a certain way, then I'm just going to say that because I noticed that from my life experience. That's not politics to me. That's just human. Like it's human to look. From my life experience, see a different perspective. And does everybody see it my way? No. I hope that not everybody sees it my way, because that's how I learn. So but I do have a perspective, and so I think maybe one of the things you talked about is like, okay, people think of humanity as like this totalizing thing, like let's just all be humans. I don't believe that. Like I want to be humans in our diversity. Like I mean that's what humans are. Like to be human is to be from different perspectives. To be human is like we're all standing around this big elephant, right? And we're all touching a different part of the elephant. And it's like nobody knows the whole story. Nobody can see the whole elephant because we're grabbing a little piece. And the only way we're going to learn about this big elephant is if we talk to each other.
Right.
If we don't talk to each other and get the different perspectives, then the elephant's going to sit on our faces. That's kind of like when I talk about humanity, I talk about humanity in diversity. I don't think there's a humanity outside of diversity. I don't think that makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. It's an interesting perspective. Definitely we need to talk to each other. And I find that, as a world, as a culture, we're doing that less and less and less. We're sort of got in these little insular pockets of, news that we see and news that we believe or don't believe, and facts and alternative facts and all this crap that's out there. And we're not talking to each other. And I feel like we're all getting angrier and angrier at each other. And like, I would be interested to hear more about some of the topics that you talk about on Shelf Stories, and how they relate to the game world, and how you address these issues in the game world.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the episodes that caught Myron's eye. So this is something I'm doing recently. It's called the Case Files. The Case Files is short for cultural stereotyping. Oh, I don't even know my own acronym. Cultural Appropriation, Stereotyping, and Erasure. CASE. Case. And so I spent basically all of 2021 kind of, like I knew all this stuff. I'm a social worker and I've been educated. And like when I went to college in the 90s, and we're talking about critical theory in the 90s. So, I mean, this is stuff that I've been working on a long time. It's just a question of like, how do you apply it? How do you understand it? How do you make it teachable? Because it does us no good if I'm just going to espouse my scholarship because no one listened. So it took me a while to kind of come down to a teachable little bit, and so Case is my attempt to do that. So it's my lens through which I analyze games. And I analyze games as like, okay, these are cultural products, right? Game, like, see, people say, oh, it's just a game. Oh, it's just a game. Don't worry about it. No one's gonna, start a murder spree or start a war because they played a game. It's like, well, no. However, like the ideas of a game can get into the culture. Like you have to believe in a game as a cultural product. So like the ideas can reflect the culture, and ideas can reproduce the culture. So what are those ideas that are reflecting the culture, reproducing the culture? And a lot of it is cultural. A lot of it is on the stereotyping. Black folks and Latinos and everything. But it doesn't have to be that. Like I talk about mental health. I talk about games as reproducing stereotypes of mental health. What does it mean to be insane? ADHD, right?
By the way, I remember what I wanted to was what I was gonna say. I actually wrote it down. I'm just gonna get this in here real quick.
Okay.
So politics, like when people say hey, like, I don't want this to be political. It actually abstracts and like otherizes like the fact that we're talking about like people's actual humanity.
Correct.
And and that is actually a threat. Like I asked my wife Anna about something that was similar to this idea that, you know, like you know, I have friends that, you know, will go to you know, a concert in a state or a city or an area that's like very, very hostile to me just because of how I look. And, you know, I asked her, I was like, hey, so like, what do you think, like, what would you think if I started supporting like MLM or MRM stuff? And I was like, and she was like, well, I would have a problem with that. And I was like, well, you know why? She's like, well, that's a threat to me because I'm not a dude. And I was like, oh, then it's a threat. And so I, you know, one of the challenges that I have is how do I reconcile that, you know, people that I love, people that love me, are just comfortable going to those things that are like just like an intense threat. And I think I'm just thinking about like it hits a particular way when you think about it that like that, and it's just like But onto the subject that was going.
I mean, okay, so it links up. It does link up in terms of like people reading. Like one person reads like one thing as like, okay, this is my fun. Another person reads it as this is a threat to me. So like, and we bring different life experiences depending on what's going on. So like I was just about to mention like mental health. So I have a big thing about Cthulhu games, right? Eldritch Horror, Arkham Horror, that kind of thing. So and there was another recent Kickstarter. I did a video about this too called Lobotomy 2. You know, Manhunt. And in that particular game, like they had like you were an escaping mental patient, and like you picked your quote unquote diagnosis, and that became your superpower. So like you could pick ADHD, you could pick OCD, you could pick schizophrenia. And as you grew in your, you know, your mental illness, then you get more powerful. And, I mean,
wow.
And you get more violent. That's the thing. Like you get more violent, you get quote unquote crazy. And and so like, you know, you could say, oh, it's just a game, it's just fun. But, you know, like people who really genuinely have OCD are going to look at this thing going, no, this is not my experience. Like OCD sucks. OCD doesn't make me more able to kill a werewolf. You know, it doesn't make me more like I don't find things better. As a matter of fact, I lose things all the time, and it freezes me in place because I can't find it. So like so there's all these different ways in which like kind of stereotypes in gaming can, you know, like if that's not your life experience, then whatever. Like my thing is Puerto Rico. I'm a Puerto Rican. The current version of Puerto Rico is garbage to me. But most people that I run into, they don't see it because they're not Puerto Rican. So like I've learned over the years, because I used to come in like a fireball. It's like, oh, you got to see this. And I've learned over the years, like that's not everybody's life experience. I just have to articulate my experience and invite people to say, okay, can we do this better so that everybody can benefit? You know?
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you like that's the science of this stuff. It's like, okay, just because I don't see something as a threat doesn't mean that everyone else has to see it that way. If someone sees something as a threat, it may not be something that is worth responding to, but at least try to see it from their perspective, try to have a little empathy. And if it can change and if it's worth changing, then go ahead and change it. So now there's another part of it where it's like, sometimes let's say you are like a good old, center of the hobby type, person. And, like I have a game over here, Spirit Island. I have people that think Spirit Island's a threat to them. And because it turns around the colonizer thing. So it's like, that game is racist against Spanish people. That game is racist against conquistadors. I'm like, good. We deserve to be raced against. So like that person finds it as a threat, but like I'm critiquing power there. So like if someone powerful sees something as a threat, now I know I'm on the right track.
Right.
If someone marginalized sees something as a threat, then I got to think twice. But if someone in power thinks something's a threat, now I'm on the right track. And I know people get a little when they say that. Someone has to speak for the marginalized people. We're not, like, this isn't equal here.
Yeah.
You know, like
Right.
we're trying to get to equality, and the only way we get to equality is by going through power.
Right.
So
Right.
if I have to afflict some comfortable folks, then I'm gonna do it.
Right.
You know?
So I think what might be helpful at this point is if we talk about some of the inequalities in board gaming in particular. I think, I mean, we can talk about in society as well, if that's what you want, but I feel like those are maybe a little bit more visible. For most people, you can kind of see where, the inequalities happen. But I find, like, when you're talking about a board game that's about colonizing, an island or whatever, I mean, it could be Puerto Rico or it could be Catan for that matter,
Sure.
right? I mean, Catan is this imaginary place, but let's not kid ourselves about what we're playing in that game, right? I mean, we are taking over someone else's land.
Right.
How do we identify those kinds of concerns in board games? Because I don't think everyone's attuned to it. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I mean, okay. So let's take a step back and talk stats. Like, so this is, I don't know if you know who Tanya Popeda is, or if either you've heard of her. She's a PhD researcher, and she did a big study about board games and the demographic composition. So she came up with some interesting stats. Of the top 200, so it's taking a sample, right? Top 200 games on BGG, 92% of those games were made by white guys.
There we go.
92.
That's
hard stats. You can't argue with these stats.
That is an enormously high number.
It's a huge number, right?
It's ridiculous.
So then I forget exactly how the numbers broke out, but it's like there are more like fantastical creatures. Goblins, dragons, aliens. There are more of those than women on the covers of the games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you take and you have to do that work, and she did the work. And I heard her on my show, and it was a great conversation. She's been all over the place, so you see her stuff. So like if you just I think if you speak to our bubbles, right? If you sit in our little bubble, then everything looks fine because I'm nice and my table's open. I'm sorry, I make the voice, but sorry, I don't want to offend people, so I'm gonna be careful. But like I could say I'm fine and my table's open, and there's no exclusion for me. I don't care about you. I care about the hobby. I care about the ecosystem. What does the ecosystem look like? And it's undeniable. Like, these are stats, and there are people who can choose to not care, but I care. Because that kind of disproportion doesn't happen naturally. That kind of disproportion is the result of little choices that creators make, publishers make, consumers make. Eric Lang has talked about this. Okay, if his name was like Deshante Lang, he wouldn't be as successful a designer.
Right.
Because I will buy a game by Eric Lang, but I might not buy a game by Deshante Lang. Not because I'm racist, but because I don't know if that game is for me. That might be a black game, and I don't know about black game. I play games.
Yeah, I see what you did there, Jason. Yo, everyone, if you don't know what just happened, you might want to check out, what I'm saying, Jason's channel. Like, if you didn't feel that right there, understand that there's some learning that is really accessible to you now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I will answer people's questions. I will. Like, I got the compliment that one of my YouTube comment sections are among the. Oh, I think I got Myron there. I got him.
Myron's going.
I wasn't expecting that one.
No, but that's so dope.
Yeah.
But that's so dope because these are the kinds of conversations that we can have where I'm like, yo, hold on a second. If you don't know what just happened, you have very easily accessible learning that can happen. You can put this clip right here in front of any person that you trust and ask them what happened there. And that will be you learning and actually getting a good non-white friend.
And I'll tell you, this is societal. right? I'm not accusing anybody
sure.
of racism, but like it's societal. So like this was last year they talked about they did this huge study of who gets to rent houses and who landlords prefer. So like you know, landlords are something like 3 times more likely to accept a white name than a black name. Like if your name is, you know, Devontae or Chantel, then you're not gonna get rented a house if your name is Ryan or Susie
Myron.
or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, hey, look, people, this is like, you know, and they've done this study with like, you know, resumes and jobs and all kind of. This is documented stuff, and you know, people. I think there's an instinct to be like, oh no, that's not me. That's not board gaming. Board gaming is different. Board gaming is we're nice people. I've never met a racist here in my life, and I'm like, it's not about like people think racism is this intentional hatred, and it's like it's not. It's unintentional, and it's a result of bias and ignorance and people not being educated and just kind of going. And like the default is towards white. Its default is towards this is the safe thing for me, and the other thing is exotic and maybe not for me, and that has effects. And the effects are just what I described. You know, 92% of board gaming, top 200 board games are made by European white guys, and that's not like I'm not hating on European white guys. It's like it's a lot, a lot. You know,
it's just a lot. Exactly.
How can we make space?
And it impacts the community in a way that doesn't make sense because I mean, when you think about board games, even just in the conversation that we had today, most of these are from cultures that people that are not in the quote mainstream are from. And imagine how much more dynamic the board games would be if there wasn't just one story being told about those different cultures.
Right.
And like the other thing I wanted to talk about is it seems like we're pivoting on 2 different sort of like meta constructs here. One is advocacy. And it is, you know, me telling stories about going to a game store and no one wanting to play with me.
Wow.
That's the advocacy side. Hey, we deserve to be here because it's the right thing to do. But I like what you were talking about earlier about getting in the system and like just the equity side. Okay, I have 5% of the vote, and so we're going to do what the 5% that I control, we're going to put those resources to the things that I say. And I'm not going to ask anyone. I'm just going to make the vote with my interest in the business. And so I love in the second half, we're going to, you know, we're going to talk more about this, but I love thinking about it from that perspective. Me and myself, I'm 45 and I'm also on the side of like, look, I'm only interested in equity. Like, give me some shares, give me some votes, and I'll do what I feel is appropriate. Period. No discussion.
Yeah. So I mean, it's valuable to have these discussions, right? It's valuable that because there are people who are still learning, we're still catching up. But so that's that. On one level, I'm not going to say it's not valuable. However, what Myron's saying is that the time for discussion is kind of over.
Right.
I mean, how much discussion are we going to have? I think that it benefits the current structures by keeping the discussion at the one-on-one level, right? It benefits like if we're constantly saying okay, this is why diversity is good, this is what we're trying to do, and then you know, like we even had that discussion. Like Puerto Rico came out 20 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, and it's like, oh well, I get it drives me nuts. It's like, okay, well, it's just a problem now. We're at a different time. I had that reaction in 2005.
Right.
Yeah.
I looked
like,
at
seriously,
I have to
Jason.
say though,
Oh,
the reason that these kinds of conversations need to continue, I think, from my perspective, is because we keep hearing things like, you know, I mean, you mentioned Black Lives Matter. We'll hear all lives matter. Or we hear about, I don't want politics in my board game Facebook group or that kind of thing. And we have to explain that it's not about politics. It's about human rights. It's not about, you know, Blue Lives Matters or whatever crap that people are saying. It's about this group in particular. And you bringing that up is inappropriate. And like there's groups out there that we still need to have these one-on-one conversations with, obviously, because I think we're not talking to each other.
I'll agree and I won't agree. I'll agree in the sense that like the conversations are always worth it. I won't agree in the sense that like Like, I think, okay, so there's only so many powerful people in board gaming, right?
Yes.
There are people
Yep.
who are in charge of the distributors. There's you know, the head of Asmodee and the head of Panda and the head of, you know, like the center of power. There is a center of power in board gaming. The
Yep.
people that run the cons, the people like they have known this.
Right.
You know, like the previous activist generation to me, like the Eric Langs, the Manny Hutchins, and the Susan Sheldons, and you know, a bunch of other people who are like kind of old heads at this. I'm new. This is only my like kind of second year doing this, but I'm standing on the shoulder of giants. So like this is not new to the power centers. So like it benefits them because they just kind of go along to get along, but at a certain point, we go from telling and discussing to showing.
Right.
You know, we go
that's
from,
a good point.
okay, now it's like, okay, you know, like as an example, like, so Alexander Pfister released Maracaibo. Maracaibo is gross. It's colonialist, whatever. And so it's like, okay, he announced, I don't know if it came out yet, but like he announced an expansion called Uprising. And it's like, okay, now you get to play from the colonized perspective. Now you can be a resistor. And it's like, oh, that's cool. I want to play a resistor. And it's like, more, please. That's it. That's all we want. That's the world did not end.
Right.
We didn't lose your games. Just do more of that. Like do more of that. And so that's what the idea is. You know, and in order to be able to do, you know, like to Mara's point, we got to have the say. You know, we got to have some say so up in these games. And I think so. Like so to your point, Chris. Like I think we need to show, like, continue to demonstrate to people that we don't mean any harm, demonstrate to people that politics isn't harmful, that, you know, that representation isn't harmful, like we can get more games. So we do have to continue those conversations. But I think on a parallel level, now we have to like get in the power centers and show people what the new stuff is. And that's why, again, like Wingspan is so powerful. Like this is what happens when a woman can design and a women can do art. You know, and they're designing from their passion. More of that, please. Yeah. That's all we're saying. That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
And she got stroke.
What?
Elizabeth Hargrave got stroke now. She got stroke. Elizabeth Hargrave can like, you know, she can go to a power center and say,
I've not heard this phrase. What is she got stroke? What is stroke?
Stroke. Power.
Okay, she's got some power. Okay, cool.
She got some. She got, like, you know, she's after that 5% level. She's like, if she, you know, she really wants to kind of make something happen. Like, you know, she's at 1.4 million copies with her game, and she's designed other games. So it's like, you know, that people listen to that.
Right.
Like, people like if a game has Elizabeth Hargrave's name on it, then it sells more. So like that's what people want. So it's like that's the point where I want to get to. I want to get to a point where Jason Perez's name is on a game. It's like, oh, okay, that game is for me. If you're white, if you're black, if you're Puerto Rican, if you're Chinese, if you're anything, like that game is for me because Jason Perez is on there. That's where I want to get to.
Yeah, you know what's really interesting about this conversation is how people who are from one cultural group automatically think that there being another cultural group involved, there has to be some kind of conflict.
Correct. Yeah.
And like, I'm thinking about a friend of mine. She's been explaining Muslim to me, and I asked her, well, you know, tell me about the prophet, and she was like, well, there were many prophets. Muhammad was one of them. Jesus was a prophet. Like, we don't disparage the name of Christ in the Quran. That doesn't make sense. And I was just like, what? And she was like, no, like, and she was telling me all these things from both of the texts, and I was like, so then making the zero sum game maths our choice, then why are we choosing zero sum game maths when it comes to this or that or anything that is causing people to just be so much more agitated and angry at each other?
You know, I mean, we call it moral
yeah.
panic, and then moral panic's old, man. Like I remember like reading, this was like, you know, Socrates back in the ancient Greeks was like, oh my God, they're writing where nobody's, you know, reading and talking anymore. And now there's this invention called writing and nothing's going to be the same. We're going to be dumber. We're going to be this. And, you know, people just, they get used to what they get used to, and they feel like any like change is scary. And like they're gonna lose something. They're gonna lose something valuable. I call it drowning in a shallow pool. So like you can get splashed in water, and you could be like, no, what, no. And then it's like, okay, put your legs down.
Right?
Legs.
Yeah.
And then
I
it's
do
like
that all the
Caddyshack,
time.
man. They just stand up, and it's like that. and that's what I'm trying to do. That's my project in Shelf Story. So it's like I constantly say all the time, like I don't want to cancel nothing. People accuse me of cancel culture. That's stupid. Like I want more games. I want more, and I want more room for the games. And you know, it's some things in the center have to kind of make room. It's kind of like being on a bus and there's like somebody manspreading all over 5 seats. And it's like, just I don't want you to leave. Just close up them legs a little bit, make room for other people.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. How do you create a community? How do you create a space? How do you create an environment and an ecosystem too that just captures all of that talent?
Right.
And
so much talent.
Yeah, so much talent, and just moves it forward. So that's one thing that I think about, because I love to think about how to customize environments for people to be their best. And like in games, in board games in particular, I think that there's a real big need to expand and open up like these different cross audiences, and like these like there's so many more types of interactions that are available when you start merging in these cultures and people talking and working and living and supporting each other. There's a lot that can be done to improve that.
Yeah. So I'll let me start to turn to that second half, because like we can critique all day and everything. I want to start to talk about like solutions and what's going on.
Yeah.
So I love what you said about like cultivating that the supportive environments, right? Letting people be creative and putting them in their best positions. Like the most people work in concert, or most people work in groups. Like 1 + 1 + 1 makes 5 in a lot of ways. Like if you get the right ones together, like the whole emerges bigger than some of their parts. And I think we're coming from a paradigm where it's like the designer, and like we can't not impinge upon the designer. They shall get ideas from on high, and they'll give us games and whatever. Don't constrain creators. I hear that a lot. Don't constrain creators.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, sometimes you'll get like a genius game, but most of the time you're gonna get mediocrity. Most of the time you're gonna get stereotypes. Most of the time you're gonna get just like the same old. Right. Mm-hmm. There's a thing I show about lead characters in video games, and it is a bunch of white guys. It's Desmond from Assassin's Creed, and it's Nico from Grand Theft Auto, and it's like they all look the same. And this is what happens when you just get like the one idea, right? So like, how do you promote creativity? You put multicultural teams together, and you prioritize authenticity. You don't prioritize diversity. You do not prioritize diversity, because that's just box checking.
Dig into that, Jason.
You prioritize authenticity.
So
if you're making a game about that and you want some diverse representation, like you get into the soul of what that game is, especially if it's a historical game, then it's like, okay, I want people who know that history and who are from those lands. If I'm making a game about jazz, I don't want just like a black guy. I want a person who knows jazz. I want a person from New Orleans and Alabama. I want people that are soaked in this stuff. I want people who are authentic. And like, I'll give you an example. I did a cultural consulting for a game called The Gig. This was just on Kickstarter. It was a jazz game. I love jazz games. It was by a British guy. By a British white guy. So it's like, okay, British white guy, are they the one that should be telling the jazz story? That's what they emailed me. They're like, okay, I love jazz. I want to make a game about jazz. I don't know if this is my story to tell. So like, I like jazz, and I work as a cultural consultant. So like, bring me on. And like, here, talk to this other person who is black and who knows jazz from a different angle. Talk to them, get them involved. So like, as a team, we worked with him and, made the game feel good. And the game was on Kickstarter, funded, and here we go. So
now, Jason,
that's real.
Yeah.
Yes.
What? Go ahead. You're laughing.
Jason, I was gonna. Well, you're like a British guy now. I was like, well, was he Mark Ronson though? You know what I'm talking about? Like, so, what's his name? Bruno Mars, that song. Mark, a British guy, wrote that song.
Yes. Yo, the hottest salsa is written by German guys.
Yeah, I was gonna be like, yeah, he's like jazz written by a British guy. I was like, was it Mark Ronson though? Like that's literally what I wanted to say.
But seriously, dude, one of my favorite salsas is Vivir Mi Vida by Mark Anthony. A German guy wrote that. You know, and it's like the best stuff, because you know there's some, they have like they go through music theory and they kind of break things down and recreate them and everything. So it's like, I'm cool with that. And so it's like, if it was just the German guy, then it probably would have been hot. But it's like, they gave it to this thing, they gave it to this thing, they work together and they come up with something, you know, that really tastes good. So it's like, that's really where you want, you know, that you get stuff that's good, that's authentic, that's, you know, that has broad appeal. And, you know, so it isn't just this one vision. It isn't just, okay, I'm going to give it to one guy and they're going to, you know, I mean, maybe there should be one person in charge because you want people making decisions, but the input's got to come from multiple places. If you, especially in gaming, because we get so many games that are about places. Like, we don't, like, you know, I think gamers, they want to go on adventures. They don't just want like you know, we get the occasional abstract game, but like even a game like Azul, right? Azul is the most abstract nothing, but but the color scheme comes from Iberia. Right. So things like someone had to know like Iberian color schemes and Iberian stained glass to soak the color scheme in there. So that game kind of rises a level because someone went to another part of the world, brought it in there and made something that resonated with people. That counts. That counts.
Yeah, that's so simplistic. I mean, that's a, and by simplistic, I mean the genius of things are generally their simplicity and how easy it is for the average person to see clearly what has occurred.
Right.
And so just adopting an art style and bringing so much significance to that part of the world, I think that captures almost perfectly, Jason, if not perfectly, what we're talking about here. Like Azul wouldn't exist if that didn't occur. And there, I'm sure the business that came from, you know, people from that part of the world helped them to, you know, access more. And now there's more sets of Azul and there's different colors and there's, you know, there's the 4th of July one.
It's all over the place.
You know, yeah.
So like, I mean, I don't know how much cross-cultural stuff is old. It's a simple game. Like if you want to go a little bit deeper, if you want to go, you know, make a game about Egypt, make a game about, you know, all these other places. Like if you just rely on your own self, we're going to get the same old stereotypes. I mean, how many Egypt games are we going to have that have pyramids in them? Come on. Like Egypt is way bigger than the damn pyramids. You know, and if you go, you talk to people from that area, it's like, okay, wow, we got this, we got this, we got this, we got this. And so like, if you want to tell like a story and want it to feel good, just, you know, there's nothing wrong with seeking out authenticity. There's nothing wrong with ceding a little bit of power to a person, like, you know, give them a little bit of editorial control. So like, you know, this is, and obviously I'm talking about culture consultants. So that can go wrong. Like that could be like, okay, we got this culture consultant and they, you know, they have no real power. They just like say stuff and like, oh, we have them. You know, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about like, you know, real editorial, like if the culture consultant says something and it's not, you know, it's not feeling right, it's not kosher, listen. You know, heads up, listen. So, you know, I don't know if we want to talk about this, but like, you know, the whole viticulture world thing, right? Viticulture worlds, for people who don't know, the latest expansion from Stonemaier Games puts it's a winemaking game. It's very simple. It got you know, there's no real culture.
I love viticulture.
Yeah, viticulture is awesome. The expansion came out and they made it like a world historical thing. And, you know, part of the motif was that they put in like famous winemakers as cards. So, you know, there's lots of winemakers been around forever. So it's like, okay, there's plenty of historical examples, but two of the cards that were chosen in the original version were Cortez and Pizarro, who are S-head colonizers. They happen to, like, you know, I could totally see it. The people just, you know, whoever's making the game's like, oh, we need famous winemakers. Ooh, Cortez, he owned wine vineyards and he promoted, you know, winemaking, and that he belongs there. But it's like, you get a cultural consultant in there, it's like, ooh, you don't want that guy. Ooh. And you know, so Jamie's good about this stuff. Like he had a cultural consultant, but the cultural consultant didn't like really understand how bad it was. They just kind of flags like, okay, you might want to think twice about that. You get somebody from the land or someone who wears authentic, but it's like, no.
Right.
That was like, no, we're not. No, the editor. I am the editorial control on this one. No, you take that out right now.
Yeah.
And that would have saved a whole bunch of headache.
Yeah.
So as it is, like, because it was a little bit further in the process, so they're like, oh, it's not that bad. We'll put a blurb in the rule book that these cards are in there, right? So that was the solution. So it's like, the cultural side gave the feedback. This is a little bit difficult. They said the rules book, okay, these cards are in there. We're not recommending what they do, but the way the cards were in there, they weren't just colonizers; they were whitewash colonizers. They didn't actually do anything bad. Like, if it was
they were the heroes.
The heroes.
Yeah, they were the heroes.
They were the heroes.
They just they come bearing gifts. Here, have great stuff with no cost whatsoever. And like that, like Latinos live with the whitewash colonizers in our face every single day for the last 500 years. My family's from Ponce, Puerto Rico. And Ponce is one Ponce de Leon who is a colonizer. And I gotta walk around this area, know that I'm in a city that's named after a dude that would have killed me had he seen me.
Yeah.
You know, so like I gotta walk with that, and the whitewashing and the beautiful vibes, and that, like, we don't, like, I don't want that in my game. Right. I don't want that. That's supposed to be escape for me, and it's not necessary.
Right.
It was just casually thrown in there. So like, if you're trying to tell something about colonizing, like, I got no problem with colonizer games. I think colonizer games should be war games. So like, I know that I'm going to get conflict, and I got no problem with colonizers in games, just not in my Happy Fun Times Euro game where I'm getting the BS story.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right.
And so what a cultural consultant can do is, I'm sorry, just to round up the thought and to get to Myron's thing, like, if they have that 5% power to be like, nope, not, oh, please take this out. Nope.
Right.
Take that out right now.
Yeah. Veto power is going to be important.
And that's scary. There's a lot of creators that don't want to give that up.
Yeah.
Never gonna give you up. But
I think that becomes a hard choice, right? I mean, if you're a publisher and you've got this thing that you think is this great game, whether it's Puerto Rico or whatever, and the cultural consultant is saying, you know what, it doesn't need to be about Puerto Rico. It could be about selling bananas at the corner market, right? Like in
Planeta Rico could be on our space.
It could be anywhere. Exactly. Why do we do that? I think that if they're brought in at certain points, that becomes problematic. If they're involved right from the beginning,
right?
And I don't know how you do that, because I know a lot of designers. I've never designed a game, but I know a lot of designers. I've done a lot of play testing, and they play test their group with as many their game with as many people as they can to get those kinds of perspectives. But a lot of them also use the same 20 or 30 people, right?
Right. Yeah.
For every game that they've designed, and you'll see those names in the rule books. And publishers tend to use the same designers to make their games. It's certainly getting better, I think. Do you think it's getting better? We hear it's getting better. There's more representation.
Yes.
The fact that there are cultural consultants, I don't think that existed.
Right.
Even, like, I hesitate to say more than 5 years ago, but I don't know that.
I think it's like an iceberg, right? Like the cracks are forming in the iceberg, but the iceberg's still there.
It's still there, yeah.
We see the cracks, like you said before. More cultural consultants, more people that are visible. But like at the end of the day, there's also pushback. Like like things can be better, but then there's a lot of pushback out there. People who just project and misunderstand, and they assume that we're going to take the things away. I like to say, like, okay, the center of any hobby or the center of any culture is a desire to protect status, property, and comfort. So status being, I want the say. So they're going to protect that. Property being, I want the stuff. Like, I want most of the games. I wanted 92.6% of the games. That sounds good to me. So they want to keep that. Or they want the comfort. They don't want, like, to be divisive. When you bringing up racism is divisive. So like anything that kind of rankles that sense is threatening. Speaking to Myron's point, like it's interpreted as threatening. So we're in this moment of, like, verbal diversity stuff and then pushback. and we're in this like dialectic, and I think it could go either way. And my hope is to keep on pushing and get real product out there to show people that like this doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not. This isn't like we can get awesome multicultural games. We can get Wingspan. We could get Straight Island. We can get
I just want to get this question out. So is it dangerous or hurtful, or I'm not sure what the proper word is, but is it a negative for someone like me, a white person, to say, well, it is better. It's getting better. I feel like the game community is getting more diverse and more representational. Is that negative to the community in some way? Because it's sort of giving people the right to say, well, things are getting better and it'll just get better on its own. We don't need to work at this. We don't need to talk about this. We don't need to have quote unquote politics in our game community or in our games.
We already have Wingspan. What are you talking about? Anybody who designs a game could be here. Why you're making it worse by talking about it? I'm sorry, I'm doing the voice again. I apologize. I
think it's appropriate. Well, I mean, one of the things that I'll hear a lot of people say is they'll use Eric Lang as a sort of as a weapon.
You have Eric Lang.
You know what I mean? He's one of the most popular board game designers in the world, and he's black. Well, that's one guy.
Go ahead, Harry.
That's one guy.
Yeah, I think like I think to that question, I don't think there's a problem if someone's not aware, but I think the challenge happens when I'm just going to generalize here.
Yep.
When the white person says it's getting better, and the non-white person says, well, actually, it's not. And then the white person goes, no, I said it's getting better.
Right.
Now, the white person doesn't say it like that, but it
comes out like that.
Well, typically reject that the brown person has any insight into the situation. Certainly not as much insight as a white person. And that happens. That happens with my aunt and my mother. It happens every day, all day. And so there's nothing wrong with, again, like not being aware, but the thing that typically challenges people's patience for advocacy is when the person goes, no, why not 45%? Wait, but you asked me for the specific thing, and I told you a specific answer, and you just get to reject that answer. So, all right, okay, cool. So I'm just going to start making decisions because I don't want to have these kinds of conversations anymore.
Right.
Like look at the demographics, right? I mean, we're talking to 92.6% people in terms of designers. We're talking, over 70% in terms of a demographic of the overall people who identify as hobby gaming or whatever it is. But what are the demographics of the world? Demographics of the world, I think it's, at least for the American context, and every country is different. But in American context, we're going to become majority minority by 2040. And I'm from New York City, so it got, and so it's like you're talking about a huge mismatch here. And I'll get the pushback that's like, well, board gaming is different. It's like, well, no, gaming should be for everybody. Everybody games. Everybody game. I used to work in, the different neighborhoods, and we played Uno and spades.
You played dominoes, Jason. Quit playing.
Well, yeah, and I never neighborhoods I play dominoes. If I go to South Asia, I play carom. If I'm in the East Asian context, I play mahjong. These are games. So it's like you're telling me that we can't open this hobby for more advanced games. I got Just One over here. Just One should be a game for everybody. So why if I got a game, right? If I got this hobby games and these games are lit. I love some of these games and they can be transferred, but the packaging is a certain way and it looks a certain way and it is not translated to appeal to different audiences, and we're not doing that because gaming should be looked a certain way. I question that.
Right. Like Squid Game. Like those were children's games. And they told an authentic story. And those are children's games. I bet there are probably 1 billion versions of written games, probably back to the stuff that Nintendo used to do 100 years ago in their card games that are based on those cultural games that kids play, and like so it's not exactly board game, but it is. That came to my mind because it is a story that is being told, or an experience about playing games, like community-based games that are essentially like you just draw the board on the ground. So those really are board games.
Yeah.
And we have this rich experience. Like I know I could probably, if I go on Amazon.ca or Amazon.com, I could probably buy one of those Squid Game games or all of them and be playing those right now. And we got that because an authentic story was told.
Right.
Yeah.
I would say that that's probably like, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Jason, because you're an expert in this. You're a professional consultant in this aspect. But like that seems like the peak of what could be done. I mean, there are some flaws, but they had to tell a compelling story, I guess. Yeah, sure. But like that, I would think if that rises to some level, I don't know.
Well, I mean, look, it just comes down to every culture plays games. I just like you talked about Lewis and Clark, right? The board game Lewis and Clark, and I read, so that was one of my videos. I did a deep dive of the theme, and during my research, right, I learned that the Lewis and Clark expedition badly needed the Native American tribes they encountered in order to do anything, or else they would have died. But not, so like I learned, of course I knew that, but what they did to wait out winters, and they played games. They played little sporting things, and they played, like little competitions and stuff. They played games. And I'm thinking to myself, I wasn't expecting to find games here.
Yeah.
But I did. So I was like, so we have this hobby that, again, people look at it from their own perspective, but this is my experience, therefore this is how it always is. So like, gaming's not racist because I've never met a racist. It's like, okay, I'm happy for you. Great. But, I'm not going to take away your fun. Ed, you seem like a perfectly nice person to play your table, whatever. I'm talking about the ecosystem. Talk about like, what does all of gaming look like? Because, if I see if I go to Gen Con, and it's a little bit better now, but it's not that much better. Like if I see a Gen Con and I see like a whole bunch of people who look the same, then I know that there were active things that push people out. I know there were active things that made people not feel welcome. Right. I just had another designer on a show, and they were talking about trying to break in. They were Indian person from India. And they were saying, oh, I got this really great lore for this game. It's based on, the Bhagavad Gita and, Vedic stuff and everything. And he's going to publisher after publisher, and they're saying, nah, can you do Can you do Celtic? Can you give me some?
Oh.
Yeah.
That is so wrong in so many ways. It's just ridiculous.
And it'd be one thing if they went with like a spelling game, and they're like, wait, actually, let's make this. We're going to use our this library of symbols, because we have cards and stuff. We're going to let's use those. So just change the theme. That's one thing. But when I come to you with my culture,
right?
Actually, I like those mechanics. We'll actually bring these designers in there, and we'll actually bring these developers in there, and we'll switch this theme. We'll work out all the math, and then you're going to do this game instead.
That happens. That's
different, right? But
happens.
But they would probably be like, look, this is business. By the way, no one has ever said, happy birthday. It's business to me that everyone has at least one cupcake. No one ever says it's business in that context. They always only say it's business when someone's being screwed over.
Yeah.
Right. I didn't get where you were going there with the cupcake. But yeah, you're right. It's no one ever puts it's a good thing. Yeah.
How do you always get the best cupcakes?
Yeah.
It's business.
It's business.
You don't ever hear that anyway.
Yeah.
But
it started off as a little pastry over there, but then you turned into a cupcake. How'd you do that? That was magic.
Right.
I didn't want to make a cupcake, but if you want
but that's a thing that happens. Well, we do this all the time. We just change the theme up, and it's business.
Right. So there's just all sorts of little and big ways why the hobby looks the way it is. I say millions and millions of times, this is not to like kind of steam anybody. I'm not accusing anybody of anything. It's just group dynamics. People got to realize that I come at it from a psychological perspective. I'm not like, I understand how human behavior works. I'm a student of human behavior, and humans tend towards the familiar. I don't think that it should be this huge hue and cry just by saying that obvious truth. We tend towards what's familiar. And, it's like, okay. And that also codes along, racial and gender stereotypes, but like, that's not politics. That's just human behavior. So it's like, okay, can we do something different to get people more familiar with more different things? I'll take you out of Taco Bell. I'll take you to an actual Mexican place. Let's see if you like that. I'll take you out of, Popeyes. Let's go to some authentic New Orleans place. Have some rabbit jambalaya. See how you like that. And, it's like, and I take people on a journey of what they know and take them to the more authentic seeming places. And I just ask them, like, do you like this better? And some people like, they're in their head. But for the most part, I think people want that. So it's like, okay, let's it takes some legwork to give it to them. So that's what my project is all about. Just taking people out the strip mall and getting people to the actual authentic places.
Now, I want to address something. I want to play devil's advocate a little bit. So we have this problem with, I know exactly. The white guy's going to do it. Yeah. No, but so we've talked about representation, and I think that's, from my personal perspective, that's what we need. And I don't know how to convince publishers to hire the Indian game designer to make games about his culture. But I know that we're seeing sort of that cultural consultation happen a lot more. And that's a good thing. I'm not saying it isn't. But what I worry about is, do we get to a point where, the top 200 board game designers are 85% white, but they've all consulted with cultural consultants, and maybe we're getting more diverse games, but the decision making and the power in the industry hasn't really changed. Is that a danger that we're kind of leaning towards?
I mean,
because how do you change that kind of systemic thing, right? Like, I know what you're saying about like going to a con. It's primarily white faces, both at the booths and as attendees. And it's changed a little bit since I've started gaming, but not terribly much more so. And when I started, there was like no women. If a woman walked in, everyone turned and went, oh, a woman, and that sort of thing has changed a tiny bit. I'm not saying it's a welcoming place for all women, and it's certainly not that all the time, but there certainly are more women than when I was starting to go. And I feel that, I don't know, it's just something I worry about. Like, is the cultural consultation method going to change things on a deep, strong level? And I don't know. Do you have a sense of?
So change doesn't happen gradually. Like, I mean, some change can.
That is an excellent point, and that's the answer. Thank you. Please continue.
I'll show you something. So it's like, okay, so let's say the culture consultants are doing their work, right? So culture consultants, the best that they can remove harmful things, right? So it's like, don't do this. This woman got a TNA pose. Let's straighten her out. Let's get a power pose, not to chainmail bikini out of here. The culture consultants can remove harm, and that could be that in and of itself will make things better. So there could be a time where it's like, okay, like one game comes up, and that just hits like a rocket. That's how games happen. So it's like you have a canon of games, and they influence all sorts of stuff. So it's like you get Puerto Rico, right? Puerto Rico, 2002 in America, earlier in Germany. That game is influential. Yeah. Because that game did what it did. It took, New World colonization and just made it, light and fun and Euro, all kind of stuff, worker placement, a whole thing. So like you influence an entire generation of, all these different games. So it's like, if you get the right property, either whether it's generated by a cultural consultant or by a designer from a martial arts group, if you get the right influential thing, then you'll get a cascade. Then, it's like, because that happens, like, like I think it was I was just listening to a podcast. I don't know if you know about this. This is like an Atlantic thing. It was a festival in the 90s called Freaknik. And it was like, it was a festival and people were enjoying it. And then they mentioned it on the TV show A Different World, if you remember that. And what they mentioned it once, boom. Now all of a sudden people are like, and now you've transformed the entire thing. It's now gone from this little thing to a whole citywide thing for a couple of days and everything. Transform the whole thing. And it like stuff happens that way, but like one little seed crystal can be like, boom, all this change. All this change. So my hope is that games come out, and Wingspan did this.
Yeah.
Wingspan, but the issue with Wingspan is that it's birds. So like if it was like a more women-centric story, like imagine if you get like a really great 1 million copies sold game that centered women.
Yeah.
Like that might rise to the level of just like wham. You bring in a whole new audience with that one product. And we don't get there unless we do this spade work. You get a couple culture consultants here, you get a couple designers there. That's how change happens.
You know what, that's really awesome that you sum that up right there. What I heard was that there's at least 2 dimensions of assessment that you look at when you are a cultural consultant looking at a game. So part of the solution, like, well, what can be done? Well, maybe looking at the methodology a little bit will help give us some insight into what that could change. And so I heard at least 2 dimensions: 1, harm, and 2 is impact.
Yep.
Right.
And I want to throw a side thought that's germane to this in here before we continue here. Is like on cultural consulting and looking at 85% of the people who are decision makers in the game market being white. It being one particular group isn't necessarily a problem. So like looking at, even if it was 100% white people, that's not necessarily the problem. The problem is that it is the harm / threat that those environments and those ecosystems have like typically done to people who are not in that group. That's what the problem is with it being. It's not the representation of it only being 100% white people. It is the threat to non-white people in the spaces because of aspects of white culture explicitly.
Right.
So that is where the problem is.
And the thing about white culture is like there's the harmful aspects, and like especially where if it's too monocultural and if it's too kind of suck into itself. But like it's like any culture, like I think cultures want to share, right? And I think that when there's like a meeting of authenticity, when we recognize something that's truly from something else, then now we get fascinated, right? I think that a lot of that comes from fake diversity, right? Oh, this is forced diversity. Oh, they put this black person in there, should have been a white person. And it's like that's triggering, right? But if we get something that feels really authentic, then it's like, okay, no, that's not a threat to me now. Now I can enjoy something. And so and that's my goal. I want to work towards that. I want to work towards products that are authentic and that resonate with people and that are that seed crystal to real change, because that's how change happens. Like, we get one colonization game, we get 40 of them. We get one chainmail bikini dungeon crawler, we get 40 of them. We get
one game
whatever
about birds, we get 40 of them. Yeah. It's true. No, that's an excellent point. And I think to kind of answer my last question too is I mean, obviously you're right. Change takes time. But I think too that as, the idea of a cultural consultant becomes more important into the game manufacturing system, right? That those people like yourself who are, consulting on games created by white people or other people, and you're going to make contacts and be able to pitch your games. And, I mean,
that's how it works.
I don't know what your games are like. They may be great, they may not, but eventually
my games are great. I don't work on no garbage. I work on my game.
There we go. And hopefully, a publisher of some sort is going to see that and either say, oh, we want to publish your game, or we want to, open up what the kinds of games that we're publishing to, a more diverse group, like you were talking about with, the Indian guy who wanted to bring his culture into the game. And they were like, no, that's not what sells. I can just hear him saying that, right? That's not going to sell. Yeah. And it's like, oh, really? Because that's a big, significant portion of the population of the world. And we all game, like you said.
And if you do it right, then even the white people like it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Like if you do it good. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, I mean, where I end is, this isn't like we haven't mentioned the words like cancel culture, woke, or anything like that. I think those are illegitimate words here. Like, I mean, because we won't cancel anything. Like the idea is more games. The idea is more games. The idea is more history. Like people say, oh, well, you can't change history. It's like, well, I can tell different, better history. I don't have to tell whitewash colonizer history. I like to say that gaming culture is like affirmative action for colonizers. Like we can't help it. Like we have to have colonizers and Nazis in our games. And it's like why? Why?
Right? Yeah.
Why does it have to go towards that? I mean, I get it. Like people want to misbehave in their games, and that's like, ooh, I get to have fun and everything. But I mean, okay, fine. I'm not saying get rid of that stuff. I'm saying that stuff doesn't need to be influential and central. I'm not going to kink shame somebody if they want to, do their white supremacy thing. If that's your kink, that's all right. But it doesn't have to be the center. It doesn't. I would love to have a more open center with like different stuff, and that will open up room for more games. Like at the end of the day, that's what we want. We want more games, more diversity, more players playing the games coming from different places, so it's a hopeful vision. It's a hopeful vision. It's a multicultural vision. It's a vision that if without the resistance and the pushback and the projection of what they think I'm saying, if you actually listen to what I'm saying, you might actually have more fun. And soon, I'm a show rather than tell. We're recording this in July. By the end of the year, I will be able to show rather than tell. And you can judge from whatever project I have coming down the pipe.
Cool.
Well, I'm looking forward to it, Jason.
Yeah. The thing that one of the things I've written down from our talk, and the thing that really stands out, and I love the way you put it, is authenticity, not diversity. Right. And, I'm a Canadian. I was born and raised here. One of the things that we pride ourselves on is our diverse communities and all that kind of thing. And I always felt that was a way of looking down our noses at other countries. And, I think that there is a big difference between those two words, and I will probably still use diversity, but I want to try to use the authenticity. Oh my God, I can't say the word authenticity much more, because I think that's the true meaning behind when we say we want diversity, we want representation. No, we don't really care, that much about who's in the White House or whatever, who's in the leadership position. We want someone there who's going to be authentic to all of our needs. And that's the same true in every part of the game community, people who are putting the games together, to the game conventions and that kind of things. We want the authenticity. So that really, really hit home with me. I like that a lot. Before we go, I always like to ask people sort of what they're working on now, if you can share, and where they can contact you, because this is an important issue. I would want people to be able to reach out to you and chat with you and connect with you, if you're okay with that.
Shelf Stories GBL, Games Books Life. Shelf Stories GBL on Twitter. I really need to get my website going.
I'm laughing because I gotta get
I already paid for the subscription. Now I just gotta get that thing whipped into shape so that you can look at my, because I'm running a business over here. And it's a real business, and I have clients at this point. So if you're making a game, if you're I've got people like, small creators who are just getting their start with their first game. I've gotten, the larger clients and everything. I'm happy to make time, so eventually the website will be up. Until then, you could, Twitter is probably the best place. Or maybe I'm just on Facebook. I'm not a big person yet. So it's like, you can hit me up on Facebook. I'll be right there. just Jason Perez. So
Okay.
I'm very available when it comes to this stuff. And also my YouTube channel, which is Shelf Stories. I'm always interacting with people in the comments. As long as you don't use the buzzy words too much. If you're coming at me with the buzzy words, block. You know, I don't, that's how, you know, buzzy words being the woke cancel culture mob, you know, CRT, SJW. I mean, believe me. I mean, if you're coming at me with that energy, then I don't play with that. But like, if you are, even if you don't disagree, like I've mod a conversation with people who disagree, as long as it's like open to discussion, I'll engage. I'm good.
Cool.
You know,
That's
so
very good.
my YouTube channel, I'm all about that too.
Cool.
And I can vouch for that too. Like, Jason, that's how we're talking today. Like, I reached out to you on socials, and you like literally, like, Jason was ready to record in that first conversation. He was like, yo, let's just do like 20 minutes. Like, I mean, like, we talked about it and we clicked on it and we were like, okay, let's get something down. And so we're still going to do that. But like I'm just speaking to the authenticity, even as you like how you lean in, how you show up, Jason. Like, you won't be disappointed. Like, just, you know, it's just like with anything, just address people like humans that are adults, and you'll be fine.
That's it. And if it doesn't work out, hey, look, dust off my shoes, move on to the next one.
All right.
You know? I have plenty of interactions that don't work, that aren't what I think they will be. There's no skin off me. You know, I keep going because I got the goal in mind. The goal is a multicultural hobby. I'm never gonna forget that.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, Jason. It has been a real pleasure hearing a little bit about what you're doing, and you know, it's an important topic. I think that you know, it's a long time coming, these kinds of changes, and hopefully we'll continue to see more. And look, I just did it again, didn't I? I just did it again. I just sort of said, well, things are getting better, though. Things are getting better. I just did it. I wanted to end on a happy note, and that's what I'm marking this one, yo. I'm marking that. So, I got both of them. Yeah. All right. Well, the world's a miserable place. No, I'm just, I don't know how to end it. I want to say thank you very much for coming on. I think that this is a topic that we could probably talk about, you know, every month, and, you know, with new things happening and, you know, new games coming out, and the need that is there for the work that you're doing and the advocacy that you're doing. I would like to see more of that with more people. And, you know, I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for making the time. It's great.
Yeah, thanks. Absolutely. And thanks a lot. And here we go.
Thanks for listening to Board Game Chats with Chris and Myron. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast, check out their website at boardgamechats.com, or drop them an email at boardgamechats@gmail.com. You can also find Board Game Chats on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.